Buying a home lately has been different, almost more like difficult. First, you have to find a home to buy, and in today's market, that's an amazing thing. Homes are going under contract within days, even hours of going on the market. Most of them are getting multiple offers, like 8 to 10 offers each. With so many people making so many offers, how do you make your offer stand out from the masses? Well, there are things that you can include or not include in your offer to strengthen it. Cash. Cash is always king. If you can pay cash for a home, you more than likely are going to get the nod. However, there are very few home buyers that have that luxury. For the rest of us, here are 8 ways to strengthen your offer and maybe go under contract. Let's get after it. Hi, my name is Mike Lavoie. Welcome to our favorite YouTube channel where we talk about Florida and the Tampa Bay area and real estate in the Tampa Bay area. If you're interested in any or all of these, you're going to want to click on that subscribe button down below. Hit that notification button as well. My wife Paula and I have lived in the Tampa area for over 30 years and absolutely love living here. What's there not to love? Miles of white sandy beaches, great weather all year round. The Tampa Bay has so much to offer, it would be hard to live anywhere else. Among other things, we really enjoy helping people with it is probably the single largest transaction they're ever going to make, buying or selling a home. The real estate market in and around the Tampa area has been difficult if you're trying to buy a home, especially in the $400,000 and lower price range. A normal balanced market has 6 months supply of homes. What that means is if there are no more homes were to be listed for sale, there would be no homes available at all to buy in 6 months. We have been in a 2-week market for most of the year, and there is no sign of change for at least 18, maybe 24 months. All price ranges have been affected. Homes over $400,000 may take a couple of weeks and maybe only get 4 or 5 offers. Less than $400,000, assuming they're in good shape, well, they're going in 8 to 10 days with multiple offers. We have been working with several buyers in that price range. There are 8 ways we've been approaching the seller to seal the deal. We're not using them all at the same time. Each house and each offer is different. And each one of these costs the buyer something, not always money, but it does cost something. Let's get some of the more obvious ones out of the way, and no, these are not part of the 8. These are things your real estate professional might skip over, probably shouldn't, like including all the addendums and disclosures that are required to make the transaction. The listing agent should upload most of those to the MLS. The buyer's agent should pay attention to that. You're going to find that a good number of buyer's agents overlook the addendums, submit the offer incomplete, and are kicked out of competition almost immediately. Another document that has to go with the offer and doesn't is proof of funds if you're paying cash. A letter of pre-approval if you're financing. Pre-approval, not pre-qualification. There is a difference. Watch my video that explains the difference later. So what are the 8? In no particular order. Number 1, inclusions. This is not a good time to ask the seller to include the washer or dryer. If it's not included in the MLS, don't worry about it. In Florida, there is a section in the contract that spells out the appliances included. Normally it's the fridge, the stove, microwave, in-sink garbage disposal. They're automatically included unless the MLS specifically states otherwise. Let's not lose your dream house over a kitchen appliance or the swing set out in the backyard. Number 2, seller concessions. In days gone by, the buyer could often ask the seller to pay closing costs, and it might work. In today's environment, that ain't gonna work. Concessions can include non-monetary things like seller vacating the home before closing, allowing you to take possession before closing. Don't be surprised if the seller asks for a lease back for a month or 2. Accepting that could make the difference between getting the home and not getting the home. Number 3, earnest money. In Florida, the buyer is required to deposit a small amount of money in trust with the title company until closing. It's called consideration, and it formalizes the offer into a valid contract. Buyers can offer any amount of earnest money they want to. Traditionally, I've had buyers deposit 1% of the purchase price. Nowadays, we're suggesting a higher earnest money. The more skin you are willing to put into the game, the better your chance of appealing to the seller. It can help offset a concession elsewhere. Number 4, closing date and date of possession. Normally, the seller wants the closing date as soon as possible, like next week. That's not always the case anymore. The seller may not have been coached by their real estate agent enough. They may have been expecting a month before the home was sold. 6 weeks until closing, which in a normal market is plenty of time to find a new home. Instead, they had multiple offers on day 2, won a contract on day 4, and now have 30 days before closing. Remember your process to get to this point? The seller is just starting that process. Have your real estate agent ask the seller's agent for a date they would like. If you can be flexible based on what the seller needs, you could have a huge advantage. Now would be a good time to suggest a leaseback to the seller, if that works for you. Number 5, cost paid by. Every real estate transaction has cost. There's appraisals, lender title policy, escrow fees, surveys, and the list is just going. These costs are always negotiable. However, normally, the party benefiting pays the cost. For example, the buyer benefits from the inspection and pays for it. This is definitely not the time to ask the seller to pay non-seller expenses. However, this might be the time for the buyer to pay some of the seller-related expenses, offering to pay $2,000 for the seller's title policy. Just might be the deciding factor for the seller. I mean, really, $2,000 spent on that spread over 30 years is nothing compared to not getting your dream home. Number 6, use an escalation clause. The escalation clause is simple enough to use. The problem is that not all real estate agents are aware of how to explain it. Basically, what you're offering is a beginning price. Let's say the list price of the home is $350,000. Your offer would be at $350,000, but you would agree to pay an escalating price of, say, $1,500 over any valid competing offer to a maximum of $375,000. Your downside is that you might wind up paying for the house at $375,000, so be prepared. These final 2 are probably the most aggressive and could have the largest negative impact to the buyer. I'm talking about money. They need to be used sparingly and with great care and consideration of all the information you can get your hands on. Number 7, waiving or restricting the inspection. The inspection is one contingency that can create the whole deal before it even gets started. It is probably the most frustrating contingency for the seller. As a buyer, the inspection is extremely important. It points out visible defects in the house. A year ago, I would never even suggested reducing the inspection period, much less eliminating it. However, we're in a different world now. The first option is to limit the inspection period time frame. The default in Florida is 15 days. During that time, the buyer can terminate the contract for just about any reason they want to. And during that time, the seller has had the home off of the market, hoping that the buyer doesn't cancel the contract. What happens if the buyer reduces the period from 15 days to, say, 7? There is a perceived lower risk to the seller and little or no increased risk to the buyer. Option 2, waive the inspection altogether. No risk to the seller, massive risk to the buyer. That said, under some circumstances, waiving the inspection is not the end of the world. What an inspection will give you is a lot of information about the home that is going to be considered wear and tear. Caulk that needs to be replaced, tile that are broken, faucets that don't completely shut off. Almost all the information on the inspection will be minor issues that do not affect the contract or the purchase. However, a few of those issues could show up and be problematic. Outdated circuit breakers and boxes, for example. This option is going to depend a lot on the age and the condition of the house. especially the mechanicals, the HVAC, and the roof. If either or both of those have recently been replaced, that's a good thing, and the seller will be quick to tell you that on the seller's property disclosure. Would I use it on every home and every offer? Absolutely not. You should be very selective and talk to your real estate agent. Maybe use a 2-day inspection period to give yourself another chance to go out and look around for the day. Finally, number 8, waiving the appraisal. Waiving the appraisal is not as aggressive as waiving the inspection, but it can have some drawbacks, mostly financial. If you're financing, the lender is going to want an appraisal as part of the process. Let's say you're buying a home for, $400,000, but the appraisal comes up short at $395,000. It happens not often, but it certainly can. In a standard offer, you would have the option to cancel without losing your escrow, renegotiate with the seller, or come up with a difference between the appraisal and the purchase price, which is $5,000. If you had waived the appraisal contingency, your option would be limited to coming up with a shortfall in cash, the $5,000, or cancel the contract and lose your escrow. This is not a bad option if you have a good-sized pile of cash or you feel certain that the purchase price will be at below or at the appraised value. Now, these options are not necessarily set in stone, and you can monkey around with them a little bit and word them differently. You don't have to do $1,500 in the escalating. You can do $1,000. You can do $2,000. The nice part about all of these is that they are negotiable. It's up to you and the seller to come up with the dollar amount or what you're going to do. So it's a give and take thing. In the market we have today, to set your offer apart, you're going to have to make it look different or feel different than the next guys, or the guy after that, or the guy after that. If you can strengthen it a little bit, you might give yourself an advantage. If you'd like some more information on buying a home or homes in Tampa or the Tampa Bay area, watch this video. If you have questions about these, have comments, leave them down below. I will get back to them and answer them. If you have questions about buying a home in Florida, please give us a call, 813-575-2124. Been nice talking to you. We'll see you next time.